they might feel hurt, but that doesn't mean I hurt them.
My chest is the Irish potato famine, and your chest is a time of plenty.
It can cause problems to overthink somebody's facial expressions, but at the same time, I feel so reliant on them.
Disappointing somebody is different from like promising you're going to do something and then not following through.
You could have a very sparky first date and nothing comes of it.
Hey, welcome back. We're not for everyone, and neither are you. This is a podcast hosted by one hater, which is me, and one lover, which is Hessica.
Yeah. You started calling me Hessica recently, and it happens to be a nickname that my friends have for me. And I don't even know how it got started. I think it was because of an iPhone autocorrect situation. But then you just naturally started calling me that recently, and you had no idea that's a nickname I have.
It just makes sense to me.
It's just me, Hessica.
Yeah, it's just Hessica. Hessica, I have a theory. I have a new theory.
Okay.
Okay, I have a new theory, which is that I think I've solved the riddle of like being hot and being attractive.
Oh.
I have this theory that I think being attractive is just having good posture.
Oh my God. It is, and that's why I'll never accomplish it. You know? Do you have good posture?
No, I don't. I'm a mega sloucher. I'm trying to work on it, but I don't want to like do anything hard to work on it.
I just recently got an Instagram ad, probably yesterday, that was for this sports bra that apparently trains your back muscles to be more upright and give you better posture. And they were like, Taylor Swift wears this on tour. And it was really convincing. I almost bought it. But she has a lot smaller boobs than me. I don't know. I think part of it for me is that I'm carrying two, what have we referred to these as before? Gems? Two large gems.
Your beach stones. Your beach stones is what you called them. Your beach stones.
Yeah. I don't remember anything I say.
So that's really interesting to me because I always thought I had somewhat slouchy posture because I don't have boobs. And so I'm not balanced on the front. And so I hunch forward to balance my ass, which is pulling me backwards.
Interesting. No, I think that my boobs like put a weight on the front of me so that I'm more hunched over because it's like weighing me down.
Yeah. Okay, maybe the answer is that we just need to split the difference of our boobs.
Perfect. Would love.
Yeah, you're in surplus and I'm in what's the word when there's no food or a drought or no.
A drought? No. Great Depression. It's not that though. You just got cute chicken cutlets that make it look lifted, right?
What?
You just got
Are you talking about my boobs?
Bra pad things. Yeah.
Oh, I have a bra or two that makes it look like I'm wearing a bra. But
yeah.
But what's the word?
I didn't want to refer to it as a drought when I know that you can show that stuff off, you know?
Well, sure, there's ways to dress up the breadcrumbs, but what I do need to remember the word because this is annoying me. What's the word agriculturally when there's like a starvation period? This is important.
Famine.
To me. Please, no. Famine. Yes.
The Irish potato famine?
Yes, the Irish potato famine. My chest is the Irish potato famine. And your chest is a time of plenty. Your chest is the height of the Roman Empire. And mine
I have some to give though. I can afford to give some away. My left boob is bigger than my right boob. And especially at certain times in the month, it's like more noticeable in my bras and stuff.
Yeah.
So I could easily shave off a little off the left. Give that to you.
Shave it off.
Both of our postures are immediately fixed and we're immediately hot. Is that what it takes?
Yeah, I think that's what it takes. That's my theory. Okay. That's my theory.
I really think you're right. I'm trying to think of like really hot people and whether it's all because of their posture. They actually have a really ugly face, but amazing posture.
Well, I just think it makes such a difference. Like I just sit at my window where I work in my living room and just stare at people on the street basically all day. And I don't know, I spent one afternoon just like comparing people on the street who their faces were all comparable, like interchangeable faces, interchangeable silhouettes and outfits and tasting clothes, like all great, equal. And then one is rocking it so much better because of their posture. And one just like looks
Yeah.
like they are going to command an army because of their posture. That's all I
It
can
is
narrow it down to.
definitely, it's definitely like confidence. It makes it seem that they are confident if they have good posture. Whether they are or not is a
Yeah.
different story. But somebody like standing tall and proud, chest out, whatever, that's just a confidence thing. And then people who look confident and carry themselves confidently are more attractive. Like we perceive them to be more attractive. You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean.
I have a problem.
Okay.
I say, you know what I mean? And you know, like every other sentence.
I'm fine with that.
It is driving me insane. And it's driving Ryan insane too, I think, because he's
Oh,
started to
really?
tease me about it.
Oh, really?
Yes, it's so often. I think I just like need immediate gratification. I
Validation.
need, yeah.
Immediate validation.
I'm like, I have to fill the silence until you answer. I really
You
think,
like, good morning. You know what I mean?
yeah, a
Yes,
little
good
bit,
morning,
a
Jessica.
little bit. I think it's something that I've developed from virtual speaking to people like over Zoom
Mm-hmm.
and even recording the
Mm-hmm.
podcast over Zoom. Like there's the tiniest delay. And so it
Yeah.
makes me want to like pause and have that moment for a check-in. But I
Yeah.
now do it way too much. And in person, you don't need to do that. You can just let somebody breathe for a second before they say their first word. And I just really need to stop. Maybe us laying on our backs right now, if you're only on audio, then you cannot see that we're in a compromised position today, recording the podcast, trying something new. If you're on YouTube, then you already were confused when you tuned in. But we're trying this thing where we look up at the ceiling and lay on our beds rather than look at each other. And I'm still doing
Mm-hmm.
maybe I can't tell if it'll make it better or worse that I can't see you. You know what I'm saying? Oh, there it is.
There it is. There she is. Yeah, I mean, in person, you never have to wonder, huh, did they freeze? Like, it's like, oh, if they haven't
Yeah.
spoken yet, it's because either they tuned out or they're just thinking of their next thought. But on Zoom, there's always that fear that I've lost them forever. Yeah.
Yeah. It's
I
driving. I
remember,
don't know. I don't know what else to say
okay,
about it. I just hate it. It's
it's
my worst filler yet.
oh my God, I have way worse fillers. Everything I say on here is horrible. When I listen back to the podcast, it's all the time. It's stuttering. I interrupt myself in the middle of the word. I'm calling it out now, so everyone's gonna hate it even more. And I've thought a
Yeah.
lot about it. I've taken the time to abuse myself privately over it. And I have accepted that I hate it just as much as you do, but I really don't know what to do about it. So that's what it is.
Hmm.
Your has never bothered me.
Yeah. Your likes and ums and whatever else have never bothered me. I notice it
Ugh.
in myself when I listen back to the podcast, and I don't notice it in you. I just listened to your hater hour yesterday, and it was like the most articulate thing to me. You could have told me that there was not one filler word in that episode, and I would have believed you.
Hmm.
Anyway,
Okay. Okay. What else
moving
do we hate
on.
about ourselves?
Let's let me think. I just talked to my therapist about that this morning. Just not things that
About
I hate about myself,
what you hate about
but
yourself?
things that I'm too hard on myself about. Actually,
Yeah, let's get it out.
yeah, I have a little bit of an update on something that I talked about in our last episode where we were together. So I brought up that it kind of bothers me, or it just doesn't really help me when people say, like, you are inherently worthy. Whenever I have
Mm-hmm.
self-worth questions in my head of like, am I doing enough? What does my career say about me? What does this or that or the other say about me? Um, it's all because I've tied up my self-worth in things that I do and relationships that I have and like my output and my productivity.
Output. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I was talking to my therapist about that, and she explained it in a way that I have never heard it explained before.
Oh, please give it to me.
Basically, she was like, let me try to really put my mind back in there and remember. I'm getting distracted by just looking at the wall. It's weird that it's more distracting to me than looking at a
Really?
person. Yeah, right now it
Oh,
is, but I think it's just unfamiliar. I've never really looked at my ceiling for this long. Okay. Give me a second. So my therapist, self-worth, productivity. Oh yeah. So she gave me an example of chimps. And she was like, if you hand a chimp in a zoo or in the jungle or wherever a pair of sunglasses, they hold them, they look at them, and they put them on their face. They might put them on top of their head. They figure out something to do with them. If you hand them a scarf, they'll play around with it a little. They'll tie it around their neck for a second. They'll put it on their head for a second and wrap it around. They'll figure out something to do with it. We as humans are the same way. We are inherently productive. Given just natural resources and supplies and like things on this earth and other people, we will figure out what to do with it. How can this help me? How can I find something meaningful here? We do it with things, we do it with people. And so there's no need to like push yourself to a extreme level of productivity when we are inherently productive beings. And something about that just made a lot more sense to me than this idea that we're inherently worthy, because it was one step deeper of like, I tie my self-worth so closely to productivity. And now you're showing me that actually, if I stopped trying to be productive, I would still inherently be a productive being on this earth just by being a human. That makes a lot more sense to me than some, Instagram therapist saying like, you are worthy because you're nice. So that was my
okay.
big revelation this morning in therapy. I don't know if it helps
Okay.
anyone else.
Sweet. Well, I'm glad that that helped. I do like that for a way of speaking about productivity. I guess my hang up is that you're still using productivity as a synonym for worth. Like
Yeah.
for me, the whole worth talk is that I would never look at a child and be like, "Well, what did you produce today?" Like
Hmm.
I would never judge them. I would never judge their worth based on that. I would never
Yeah.
judge them based on what they produced or exclusively based on what they did for people or exclusively based on what they sacrificed or whatever. It's like, it's to me, productivity. I'm not
Why are
going to
there balloons
say
on the screen? Did you see that out of the
balloons.
corner of your eye? There were balloons.
No, I'm trying really not to look at the screen. Balloons. Interesting.
Anyway, keep going. Sorry.
um, Yeah, I guess to me, I am not trying to prove to myself that I'm productive. Like that's not my
Yeah.
highest value. I think
Yeah.
that's I guess that's how I think about the worth thing is like what have I without consciously choosing it, what have I decided are my highest virtues? That's what I
Mm.
mean. I I no longer feel that productivity is the highest virtue a person can have at all. I think like love, patience, kindness, things that I really struggle with a lot of the time are the virtues I aspire to more than productivity, more than like what I produce. So to me, the coupling of I guess I like what your therapist said. It doesn't necessarily um
It doesn't get to
I,
the root,
it doesn't really
but
get
it,
to the question for me because I'm not
yeah.
saying will prove to me I'm productive. What I'm trying to say is productivity is not the virtue. Can be nice, can be helpful if you like never contribute to anybody, never contribute to society um in any way or to your loved ones, then that's pretty useless, but that more gets to selfishness than like productivity. Yeah, I
Yeah.
guess I'm not that concerned with proving to myself that I'm productive.
Right. I think there's like two responses I have. So the first is I generally agree with what you're saying. Like, yes, in the schema of what my therapist described to me, we are still holding productivity on a pedestal, and she's proving to me why I don't have to worry about being productive because I'm inherently productive.
Mm-hmm.
So, yes, but I think that it helps me because the reason that like the inherent self-worth thing hasn't resonated in the past is because I'm like, well, I'm still having these problems. Like I'm still I agree. I believe that. I put love and honesty and
Yeah, you do.
all these virtues on a much higher playing field than I do productivity. And yet I'm still struggling with the idea of me not being productive enough. So for her to actually just meet me where I'm at with
I
that and
see.
be like, okay,
Yeah.
fine. You're concerned about that. Let's explore that. I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what helped. And then
That
the
makes
other
sense.
thing that I realized in talking to her about it was I actually have done a lot of untangling of myself from productivity as my worth over the last few years. And I've become a pretty, at least chill version of myself in terms of like how much I push myself to generate an output and be productive and work hard and make that what defines me. So
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually in a much better place with that than I ever was, and that than a lot of people are, like a lot of my friends are even. But what shakes me up is when I see somebody else being highly productive and being highly like concerned about what am I doing today and anxious about this, that, here's my to-do list and here's all the things that I need to accomplish and here's my 5-year plan. And that doesn't resonate with me, but it's still very hard to not judge myself for the fact that I'm not kind of creating a hullabaloo around it the same way that they are.
Yeah.
Um, because it's just something that like in like deep down I value, even if it's not on the top of the list of my values. And I know that like even if I don't know, I'm gonna stop talking because I think I said what I don't need to be redundant. But yeah, it's it's just that I can't fully untangle myself from that. So I need to work in a schema where it still can exist or I still have to acknowledge it somehow.
Yeah, it answers the question that you're looking to answer more so. I see
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love a good metaphor. I love a lazy chimp. I love
Oh,
a good metaphor. It's the best.
she's really good at them too. She like always has an example to pull from that I'm like, whoa, I've never thought about it in that way. You're really good at creating metaphors or coming up with metaphors on the spot. I feel like that's a talent.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm not good at that. My brain just doesn't work that way. It would take me a lot longer to sit and be like, what's a metaphor for this thing? And I'd have to go into the encyclopedia and watch a few YouTube videos, and then I'd probably just call it a night.
I think that's also good.
Thank you.
I, I have a new what did we call them? Sequence?
Sequence.
No, what is a section in our podcast?
A segment.
Segment.
We
Jesus
forgot what they're
Christ.
called because we don't really care
Because we
about
don't
them.
really do them. We don't really care. Okay, here's a new sequence segment that I think you're gonna have a lot of things to add to.
Okay.
This segment, forgive me on the branding of it. It's not that snappy.
We haven't talked about this yet.
We haven't talked about this. I think I have a talent for metaphors. Jess has the talent for language and branding and snappiness, snaposity. So
Wow,
maybe
thank
you
you.
can rebrand this. I would like to call this segment things that are a regular silent part of the female experience that men might be surprised about because they just never think about it. So on this list,
We need to rename that, but go on. We'll never be able to repeat that word for word again.
so in this list so far, I have the fact that when I'm wearing a skirt in the summer, a skirt or a dress, even like a moderately conservative one, if it doesn't go below my knees, when I sit down on a chair or a bench or a couch, it's like a 90% chance I am bare assing that bench.
Yep. I hate
90% of the time
it
in spring,
upsets me so
summer,
much.
whatever. Yep. If I'm not wearing leggings or tights underneath, if I sit down, I am bare assed to that chair. In a restaurant, I was in a restaurant with like my brother and my cousin, and I was so struck by like, it wasn't the kind of restaurant where I wanted to be bare ass on a bench, and I was so annoyed by it. And I turned to them and I was like, they don't even know. And then I explained it to them. I was like, yeah, I think like most women, if you wear or whoever wears a skirt, doesn't have to be women, if you sit down on a bench. It's bare asses all over this restaurant. It's ass on bench everywhere. And they were like, what? And I was like, yeah, it's not even a short skirt. That's just how it works when you sit down. Right?
Yes.
Am I right?
Yes, you're right.
Okay.
You're right.
I thought this was important to tell the men. I thought this was important.
I
Okay,
mean,
other things.
yeah, I can think of other things to add to the list. This one, I agree, is definitely a thing and it's not talked about enough, but I don't know if I need men to know it. There's a lot of other things I need men to know before they
Oh
know
yeah,
that.
yeah. That's true. That's fair. I don't know that I need men to know it, but I just was like, to me, this is female Snapple Facts. Maybe that's what
Yeah,
it
oh,
is.
I love
Like
that.
nobody
That's
needs
the
to know
name.
this.
That's the
Okay,
segment.
Lady Snapple Facts.
Lady
Um,
Snapple, yeah.
Lady Snapple Facts. I don't need men to know it, but I think they will be
Interested.
dumbfounded to know it, and they were. The other one that occurred to me then was it is a daily or at least multiple weekly times experience to walk into a bathroom stall and public bathroom wherever and just see blood on the toilet seat and not bat an eye, just not even bat an eye. But again, an experience that I don't think you're having in a lot of men's bathrooms.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. We see a lot and we keep
Feel
it
a
to
lot
ourselves. We
with
bottle
our
it up.
ass.
Yeah,
Yeah.
true.
Yeah.
And they need to know. The things that I was thinking of immediately when you brought this up were
Something like
like
that will like help the race of women, like something that will further our existence.
maybe, not really. I mean, I guess it has to do with the pink tax. Like, how much does mascara cost, for example? I was listening to a podcast that's hosted by a guy and his fiance, a woman, and he like they recounted a story where he said like, oh yeah, if you want to buy a tube of mascara, I don't need to know about that, like it's $60, whatever. And in her head she was like, $60, like okay, if I get Lancome, like that's not what it is. So he like overcorrected. I feel like some guys would think mascara is $5
Yeah.
and some think it's 60, and really it's somewhere between 10 and 30. And anyway, so my brain went to like the cost of being a woman and just
Yeah.
day-to-day items we use that it's like a little tube with like black liquid in it. You wouldn't think it could get up to 30, or it can get up to $60.
Yeah.
Um anyway, so that's what I thought of. But
I like
blood
that.
stains, butt marks, sure. That too.
Okay. Thank you for hearing my segment.
What else can we add to the list? Or I guess we should leave it as a segment for the
Yeah,
future.
I don't have anything right now, but maybe if people want to comment or write in with their additions to this, just like daily benign, they're benign, they're neutral occurrences that I just think are strange. I don't
Yeah.
know. When I was telling my brother and my cousin this, and they were like, "What?" And I was like, "Yeah, most of the women in this restaurant are touching their bare ass to the chair you're sitting on."
Was it like I could see that being a pleasing thought to them? Like, oh,
I think it probably depends on the woman for the guy. I don't think everybody wants everyone's bare ass.
true that. True that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I it also makes me think of I have this kind of deodorant stick looking thing that is for thigh chafing. I talked about it on a recent episode and it looks like a stick of deodorant. It goes in my purse. I just rub it on my inner thighs when I'm wearing a dress where I need chafing support for my thighs rubbing together.
Chafing
And
support.
yeah, I feel like that's something like products like that exist for such a niche need that women have. I feel like many men could just be baffled that that even exists, like that there's a market for that product, you know?
Yeah. Let's put it on the list. I love it.
Okay, Lady Snapple facts.
Lady Snapple Facts.
I'm
Yeah.
gonna create some weird visual, like a logo for
Please. Oh,
it.
I love that. That's great.
Yeah, we'll
Do you
never
remember
return to it again.
Do you remember that Snapple fact that I feel like people still reference all the time? That I feel like it was like the banger, like the standout Snapple fact, which was like you will swallow an average of 8 spiders in your lifetime, like in your
Oh,
sleep. Do you remember that?
yeah, I do.
And I'm like, how did they come up with that number? I think we all kind of just took it and ran with it and we're like, wow, science. It was on a bottle cap. But like, how the fuck? Who the fuck? It kind of makes me look twice at Snapple.
True. Well, it's more like
Where was
Yeah,
that study done?
I want to
Where was
know how
that
that study was
lifelong study
conducted.
done? Yeah.
Somebody's just watching a person sleep every night, one person,
For a
and
lifetime.
counting until they
For a
die.
lifetime. Yeah. What?
That's true. How do they, or is it, do they discover this later in like a biopsy? Like there's trace amounts of spider legs in
But
everyone
is
when they
that really
die?
going to stick around? That's a good proposal. But like, are those spiders going to stick around like you're in your gut your whole life? I don't
I don't
know.
know. I don't know if we can digest them or not.
Well, that's a good point.
Thank you. It's
Uh,
science. That's what
It's
we're here
science.
for.
It was just the science part of the podcast.
I feel like weirdly relaxed and also tense.
Okay. Because of our new
Yeah,
posture
my
sleeping arrangement, recording
this is our
this.
sleeping arrangement. My feetsies are dangling, and you know
Oh,
that we
that's
hate a
I don't
dangle,
like that. I don't like that. That's bad.
but it would be too much for me to figure out how to fix that right now. So,
Yeah.
I'm kind of getting a good lower back stretch. So for
Nice.
that, I thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah, I was excited to try this laying down thing, partially because I love the sleepover vibe of our podcast. And also, I fucking cannot look at a face and not be allowed to look
Not
away.
even
I
my
cannot.
face.
I love your face, but it doesn't matter if I'm in person, if I'm on Zoom, I will not fucking FaceTime. I do not, I just don't, I don't know if it's an ADD thing or what, but like I cannot be forced to look at one spot and I'm not allowed to look away. This is not how I can have conversation just staring at people. And I think it becomes such a deficit or an attention challenge for me that instead of listening, what I'm doing is saying, look at the face, look at the face, remember to look
Mm.
at the face, remember, don't look away, remember, don't look away. And it's so exhausting to me. And then I also notice a lot of podcasters like to have like sunglasses on or something if they do video, because video podcasting really is not good for the intimacy of an audio recording or the intimacy of like a private secretive intimate moment. Like being on video basically ruins that. So a lot of
Hmm.
people try to put like sunglasses on when they record, or this is what I wanted to experiment with. I don't know how it's
You've
feeling to
described
you.
before that I feel like when you talk about your Sunday check-ins that you and Justin do, like relationship
Mm-hmm.
check-ins, you have
Mm-hmm.
always described that you lay down and talk about it,
Oh
which
yeah.
I understand from exactly what you just said, like staring at someone head on. It's the same reason that going on a date, like a first date and sitting at the bar rather than sitting at a table across from each other is just a
Mm-hmm.
much more approachable way to converse with a new person or converse in a situation where you're sharing vulnerable things or
Yeah,
whatever. Like
it's like
going on a
what
walk is another way.
it's like
So I
the
get it.
setup that they would do in like the stereotype of going into a therapist's office. You stare down like lay
Right.
down and look up at the ceiling. I think it just makes it so much easier, especially when you're having a hard relationship conversation, because you're not distracted by how the other person is receiving it. You can just sit there and say what's true. And if you're the listener, you also don't have to be concerned with what you look like when you're reacting. You can
Hmm.
give yourself a little bit more space to just receive what they're saying and have your private reaction and raise your eyebrows or make whatever face you need to make. And it's not, you're not both adding in additional factors when the goal is just to like say honest things.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense to me. And it also makes me so uncomfortable. Like, I feel like I rely on people's facial expressions or nodding or, something like that. Like being able to look them in the eye and look them in the face
Mm-hmm.
to get the full picture of how they're feeling about something and how they're reacting, even
Mm-hmm.
though that can also create challenges where, Ryan can have a very expressive face sometimes and I read it as one thing, and that's not actually what was going on internally for him. That's just kind of the facial reaction that he had in the moment.
Mm-hmm.
So it can cause trouble and it can cause problems to overthink somebody's facial expressions, but at the same time, I feel so reliant on them. So it's actually
I see what
very
you mean.
uncomfortable for me to think about doing a conversation like that, not looking at each other, but it also makes a lot of sense to me, with everything that you've said as to why it can be helpful.
Yeah, I mean that makes sense too. Like obviously we do rely on social cues. That's a huge part, like physical cues, facial cues. It's a huge
Yeah.
part of communication. I guess it helps like sometimes Justin and I will lay down and talk like that, but we'll also eventually turn to each other. And I feel like maybe the cadence in which we do it is like looking at the ceiling and not barreling into each other's eyes is helpful for detangling from those moments where you are too focused on how someone's going to receive something because
Mm-hmm.
it's important to care about how people receive things, especially your partner. But there's also moments where you need to distance yourself from caring about how they receive it because the important thing is that you say it. You know what I mean? And it's like sometimes I think for me, taking that moment of being like, you know what? This might make him angry or this might hurt his feelings, but it's true and it feels important to say. And it's going to be easier for me to say an honest thing if I get that little bit of space and give him that little bit of space. And then when I'm ready to like receive his reaction and read his reaction, we can like turn to each other. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Somebody wrote us a what to do that is on a kind of related topic, to be honest. Can I read it to
Ooh,
you?
hell yeah.
Okay. So she said, what to do? All right, ladies, I'm coming in hot from a semi-shitty second date, following a great first date and feeling quite conflicted on what the
Mm-hmm.
fuck is real in the world. Me and a hinge boy went on a very wholesome park date on Sunday morning where we took a spontaneous pedal boat ride around a lake and talked about family and growing up. I felt we really connected and saw each other's personalities. And for our second date, we went to dinner in the middle of the week, which was way more awkward and felt like 1,000 other hinge dates I've been on. Does this show more about the connection or the fault in the basic ass dinner date too early on in dating? Do I go on another date or just listen to my last impression of the guy? Because maybe this is a more real perspective without as much excitement from being on a really good Sunday having coffee and a cute pedal boat ride. Been working on listening to my intuition during dating, but it's hard when the apps make me question if this is even real life sometimes.
Go absolutely go on another date. Absolutely.
1000% agree.
1,000%.
1000% agree.
Yeah, that's not it's important to listen to your intuition, but you don't have an intuition about um
The
like
person.
a comfort with each other yet. Like
Yeah.
that's not what you're getting here. You're getting random data points. To me, that's being like, okay, I'm gonna try and see if I'm any good at soccer. And you've one soccer practice that's great, and one soccer practice, and then your second
Mm,
soccer practice, you don't feel great. That doesn't mean you should quit soccer. It's like you don't really have enough information yet.
yeah.
Um, yeah, it's just one date.
Perfect
And if
metaphor.
like if both dates were total duds, then I would probably call it. But if you had one amazing one, I think that I mean this literally happened with Justin and I. We had I would say our first date was like fine, good enough to get a second date. It wasn't like a huge standout. I think first dates are you don't know each other. You're just fucking strangers. How much of a great time are you gonna have with a stranger? And second date was amazing. Uh, third date was great. Fourth date, personally, sorry, Justin. Fourth date, I was like, oh my God, I don't think we have any connection. And
Mm,
then fifth date was great. And it kind of went like that for a while because there's a million factors at play. And even if you've had one or two good dates, you're still just strangers to each other and you're in new circumstances. And especially meeting someone off of an app, it takes so long to build an actual consistent foundation of rapport.
yeah.
Absolutely go on more dates.
Yeah, I just would echo the exact same thing. Ryan and I were the same way. Our first date was like fine. It wasn't sparks flying, and he knows this. He felt it too. He left it being like maybe that's just somebody I'm going to be friends with.
Yeah.
And I left it like I didn't really want friends out of a day out of a hinge meetup. So I
Somebody I'm
was
going to be
like,
enemies with. Yeah.
either this isn't it or it is it, let's keep finding out. And I had a rule at the time where I was like, I will go on the second date if the person seemed nice enough and respectful enough and like had the
Totally.
baseline qualities and I'm attracted to them
Mm-hmm.
at some level. Do I want to like rip their clothes off right away? Maybe not. But am I like at face value? Yes, this person is attractive. Okay. All those check boxes, cool. I'll go on the second date. And our second date was amazing. At this point, I consider it our first date. Like when I look back on our early dating, I just skip the first one in my head and I'm like, that second date was so beautiful. Um, and like you said, Caroline, like the third date was good, but it wasn't as good as the second. The fourth date was, something else. The fifth date was something else. Like you can't have an expectation that every time you hang out with someone, it's going to be the same. That applies to
Yeah,
friendships, that applies to siblings, that applies to anybody.
totally.
It's
Totally.
never going to be the same thing every time. And if you want to find a relationship with somebody, then you have to actually see them in a lot of different ways. You have to see them at an
Hmm.
awkward dinner. You have to see them at the most romantic Sunday pedal boat date. You have to see them on the couch watching a movie. Like you just have to see them in so many different settings, and you're not going to get the same energy the same time. You're probably not bringing the same energy every time. So
Hmm.
I just think I would not shy away just because one date, a second date, you barely know the person. Um, one date was yeah, like lackluster compared to the first one. I also think I've
Yeah.
had situations where the first date was sparks flying
I was
and
about to say this, Jess. Yes.
yes, and then
And then that person
the dates that
sucked or
followed,
something. Yeah.
yeah, weren't as good. Or maybe the sparks were still flying on the dates, but then the person sucked. Exactly. The person
Yeah.
wasn't communicative. Outside of the dates, they weren't, texting me to check in. They weren't planning a new thing. They weren't asking about, my life. Like you could have a very sparky first date and nothing comes of it. But I do think that it's worth exploring. If you haven't come to that conclusion yet,
Yeah.
then give yourself more data points to be able to come to
Totally.
whatever the right conclusion is.
Totally. You said pattern and like of data points, and between the 2 points, one says one thing, one says another. There's no pattern yet. If you have two dates, even where it's like there's absolutely fucking nothing here I'm interested in, that begins to be a pattern. I think it starts to be a little more reasonable than to be like, well, there's nothing indicating otherwise. But yeah, noticing patterns in yourself, in them, how you feel around them. There's just no pattern yet. And I was going to say the exact same thing, where I feel like I had very rare instances of like a banger first date that was just like sparks flying, a 6 hour date, hanging out all night, whatever, which is so unlike me. And those people always kind of ended up sucking. And it's not worth nothing. I don't think it's impossible to end up with that person long term. But again, the spark is what everybody naturally reads as like this is good, but the spark fades no matter what. And banter and vibe can definitely build over time. It can,
Mm-hmm.
it's not impossible. And in addition to that, the more important foundational things are things like consistency and consideration, as far as I'm concerned. Respect, listening, willing to learn, the ability to take in new information and like shift your opinions time to time. All those things, like that's not a spark fun date thing. Those things like reveal with time. I don't know.
Yeah,
That's
you
my
talked about
opinion.
this in Hater Hour about how the banter and the silliness
Oh yeah.
and the conversation can evolve over time. And I was like wanting to be part of the conversation when you were
You
talking about it
agree?
because I totally agree. And I
Yeah.
had the same experience with Ryan. Like,
Mm,
don't get me wrong, we were able, we had good conversations on our early dates. Like, there was enough there to keep going, but we weren't being goofy, silly, bantery, super like verbally flirty. And to be fair,
mm-hmm.
that's also not something that I'm that comfortable doing early on with someone. I have before to like match what somebody was giving to me, but it's usually not the tone that I set. And if Ryan also wasn't going to be a person who set that tone early on, then we just weren't going to be that way
Yeah.
together until we formed a lot more comfort and trust with each other. And it started to develop, and there would be little glimmers of like, oh, like we had a little bantery moment there. Or he said that little cute, flirty, funny thing there.
Yeah.
And now we're ridiculous the way that we talk to each other. It's like we have a different language, but that was not there at the beginning. And how could it be, honestly? I think sometimes
Yeah.
we look at if you're somebody who's lucky to have like really great friends in your life, really close other relationships, and you have so much like vibrant conversation and deep, thoughtful, insightful conversation and funny, hilarious, silly conversation with your best friends, then you can just think to yourself and assume, like, oh, yeah, well, I'm obviously going to want to have that and should have that with my partner, but you probably didn't have that on the first day or the first month or even the first 3 months or whatever with your best friends. You just
Mm-hmm.
are, it's like recency bias.
And I think those things usually come from having established enough like shared uh
Mm,
I don't know, like environment points together. Like
mm-hmm.
we have enough things to talk about together. We have enough things to reference together that we can both comment on together. And when you're starting out, especially on like a blind date or a dating app date, you have like no common reference points, which leads me to say, I want to hear what your amazing second date was with Ryan, and I'm going to share. I think this was such an accidental success with Justin's and my series of dates.
Mm.
So personally, I do think that while like sitting and staring at each other over a table for a first date when you don't know each other, like I don't think it's usually going to be that fun, but I still think that's kind of it worked for me to do that for the first date or at a bar facing out, but like to sit and talk rather than doing a whole activity. I like that for a first date
Yeah.
because I do want to know, can you hold respectful conversation and ask me questions even when there's a lot of awkward silences? Like,
Yeah.
can you, laugh more or less at the right thing? Like, how do you treat the way? Like, I think there's a lot of information there. I think that doing an activity for the first date, um, maybe it's less awkward, but I feel like you also are wrapped up in the activity and there's less talking, maybe. I don't know. Personally, I liked doing just like a drink date for the first date. And then for our second date, Justin, I think I spoke about this on here, but Justin invited me to go to this like storytelling event in a big theater called the event is called The Moth. You can listen to them like on NPR and stuff, I think. And I love The Moth. I love going to storytelling events and stuff like this. He was really excited and we went, and the genius twist was that all the storytellers were horrible. It ended
Mm-hmm.
up being it was like a really really like poor performance. And Justin, I know since I have found he was like pretty stressed about that because he invited me to this event. Of course, you want it to be good, blah, blah, blah. But the beauty of it was that we like slowly feeling each other out. We were both trying to feel like how the other felt about it because we don't know what each
Yeah.
other's taste is yet. We don't know if like the other person thought this was great, but we like slowly felt out if we could like start talking smack about this. And then the opportunity to talk smack about basically a disaster. It was like a disaster performance. It gave us so much to talk about. It let our humor come out. It let our taste come out. We had things to criticize, to reference, to talk out together. And it was like this instant way, kind of putting us in. It was sort of an activity and it was sort of a disaster and it was sort of a conundrum. And it was a shared experience where we had all the same reference points. We had all the same information. We suddenly had all these characters to reference and we'd gone through something together. And it was like such a stellar like canvas for us to be able to connect on, which was really totally by accident. And maybe it would have been the same if the storytelling event had been really good that night. I don't know. But I actually think it was
Mm-hmm.
better that it was like it was an activity and it was an event and it was like kind of horrible. And we had a great time. So
Mm-hmm.
that's kind of my recommendation is like, I think people should on their second date be put in like an event or an activity and it goes, quote badly.
Yeah, true. Or just like sign up for something awkward or that you've never
Or
done before,
weird.
that you've
Something
both not
so
done
weird.
before. Yeah,
See
exactly.
how they handle it. Yeah.
I like that a lot. I remember that story and I didn't realize it was your second date. But I agree. I remember with my ex, like one of our earliest hangs was I think we had been on a few dates and then he was coming over to watch a movie and we weren't, we were still very early in the relationship. We hadn't defined anything. And I chose this movie. I wish I could remember what it was. It was like a thing at the time. I think it had
This was your second date?
Amy Poehler. It was our like fourth
Okay,
date.
okay.
Our
Okay.
fourth date, yeah, where he came over. Um, it was this movie that was supposed to be so good. It was like this satirical, it was a satire of a romantic comedy. Uh anyway, I was excited about it and it had a lot of good people in it. And so I invited him over to watch it and it was horrible. They came together 2014 American satirical rom-com with Paul Rudd and Amy Poehler. This
They
movie,
came
like
together. Interesting.
the previews were great, like the cast was great. It was a comedy. I was so ready for it. And we hated it. And it was really
Great.
awkward because I felt bad because I'm the one that chose the movie and,
Oh yeah.
was like, I really want to watch this. Will you watch it with me? And then I was like self-conscious that he thought that I thought it was funny and that he thought that this was my sense of humor.
Yeah.
And finally, after like feeling out each other's reactions over the course of the movie, we were able to be honest about it and we turned it off. We didn't even finish it. And it was just like it became a hilarious thing and an inside joke moving forward in our relationship that like, oh, remember when we
Mm-hmm.
watched that terrible movie and you were so anxious at first, but luckily we both hated it. So I do think there's something to be said for like a shared experience, period. And then also a shared experience that you both don't like or both find humor in. My second date with Ryan was not something like that, but it was almost in a different way. We kind of were able to like roast our first date. Because on the first date, I was just clearly the one who was leading the conversation and a lot more chatty and a lot more kind of extroverted and outgoing. And
Mm-hmm.
he was more in like a listener observer type of role, which is typically like that is uh representative of our personalities. But at the same time, on a first date, like you need a little something from the person. And he was giving me something, but I probably would have ideally wanted more. And a previous version of myself probably wouldn't have gone on a second date with somebody who showed up that way. But I was like, there was something about him. He seemed really nice. Like maybe he's just kind of quieter and shyer. So I'll give it one more chance. And we went on the second date, and he early on in the second date brought up how awkward he was on the first date and how he was so nervous and like he wanted
Cute.
to make a good impression and whatever. And so we were able to like I always say that we were breaking the fourth wall. I think we said that on our second
Mm-hmm.
date. We were like, "Oh, so we're okay, we're going to break the fourth wall for a second and we're going to talk about ourselves
Very
last
meta.
time we hung out." Very
Yeah.
meta. And it gave us something. It's like now we have a memory together. On the second
Mm-hmm.
date, we have a memory together of our first date. And so
Mm-hmm.
we can
Totally.
comment on a shared experience and comment on how each of us showed up and comment on the weird, awkward, funny things that happened. And it became like a very connective bonding moment where we were able to move forward and be like a lot more relaxed now that that was out of the way. So yeah, I just think you have to start forming memories and having shared experiences with someone in order to then have something to laugh about, like an inside joke.
Yeah. Otherwise, it's literally just flirting and it's just like sexual chemistry, basically, or like sense of humor with flirting. But
Yeah,
yeah, I think you kind of said you're a little suspect of that right off the bat. And I kind of am too. I'm just like, oh, you just, because we have nothing to go on. So you just kind of conjure this out of anywhere with
right.
someone. If you are attracted to them, it almost kind of puts me on edge. Yeah.
Oh, same. Kai, my best friend Kai was just texting me this morning about these guys who you match with on the apps. And before you even go out on a first date with them or anything, they'll start texting you every day. How was your day? Or no, like, have a good day
Die,
today or whatever.
die, die, die.
Right. And then at the end of the
Go ahead and
day,
die.
they say, how was your day? And it's like, oh
No,
my God. Like,
no.
not only is this not the way to have conversation with a brand new person, but also like you don't care how my day is. Like we don't know each other. I don't need you to
Oh.
wish me a good day. We've said this so many times on the podcast, but she was just talking about it
Yeah,
today to
some
me.
people are into that. Like some people are okay with that. So I shouldn't tell them to die. But I do want them to die. I don't know. I hate
I
it
think
so
that people
much.
need to acknowledge that even if you like that, let's say you even like the attention that that gives you,
Well,
the
I guess
feeling
I
that
guess
there's somebody
the
who's texting you, it
but
doesn't
devil's
mean that you
advocate.
have a close bond. It doesn't mean that it's like based in anything. You have
Well,
to
I
acknowledge that
know.
it's not based in anything.
I mean, I think the devil's advocate argument is that like they're like, of course I don't give a fuck how your day was, but I'm trying to have conversations so we can figure things
Sure.
out about each other, which is fine. But I also die, please.
I mean,
Can I
yeah,
say
I
that?
just think it doesn't really, the people who do that happen to usually overlap with people who are not going to ask you any follow-up questions. Like,
yeah, it's
okay,
just a gesture.
maybe exactly. Maybe you could argue like, oh, they're just trying to open the conversation. Okay, sure. So reply to them. They won't give you much back. I promise you that. It doesn't mean there's not
Yeah,
exceptions to that, but it just tends to be people who are just
I think
thinking
you're
like,
right.
oh, I have a girl who might be interested. I should just show interest by doing this gesture of
Yeah, it's
saying,
like
have a
going
good
through the
day.
motions. Yeah, going through the
Yes.
motions till I can get you in bed. I do agree that there's a very high correlation with that.
Mm-hmm. Mm.
Uh-huh.
Let me look at my
Wow.
notes. What time? Oh, how long have we been going? Okay, like
I've
51.
I have something edgy to say if you don't have anything left you want to
Ooh,
touch on.
edgy, please.
Ooh, I think it's edgy.
Okay.
Wait, I have to crack my neck. Hold on. Okay. So, so I've decided this is true. You tell me if you agree.
Mm-hmm.
This this is going to go out to all these like self-growth, self-development, healing my soul. I don't want to be a people pleaser, but I want to be good to people. Is trying to set my boundaries. Fellow hoes out there. I'm one of you, and I'm going to tell you this. If you are never disappointing anyone in your life, if you are never disappointing anybody in your life, you are not setting healthy boundaries.
Yeah.
The end.
Period.
I think so many people are afraid of ever disappointing someone. If you aren't doing that from time to time, you're not setting boundaries. The end.
Yeah, nobody's going to be like celebrating your boundary that made it so that you're not going to go to dinner with them or you're not going to go to their bachelorette party or you're not going to
Totally.
uh babysit their cat the whole week. Like nobody's going to freaking pat you on the back and say, "I love that that's the answer you gave me. Thank you so much."
Yeah. I mean, most
Doesn't
people,
matter.
your healthy friends will also be like, will probably
I
be
get
like,
it.
oh, okay, I get it. But
Right.
they're still disappointed. Like the whole point of a boundary is that you will not give everyone in your life every single thing that they want from you. So if you're not disappointing people, you are not setting boundaries. Think about it. Maybe this is clear to everybody else, but I think it was really hard for me to ever come to terms with ever disappointing or the idea that anyone I love might ever be disappointed or not get what they want from me, but like you have to. If you're someone who touts like I'm setting my boundaries, I'm not a people, then the people you love will be disappointed, and that's okay, and they'll survive it because you survive it every day.
Yeah, that's the thing that is making you want to set a boundary was probably that you were disappointed by this person or you were disappointed by how something that they tend to do or tend to not do maybe makes you
Mm-hmm.
feel like you're already disappointed. So
Yeah.
who are you going to choose ultimately? It is such a people pleaser tendency because it's like putting somebody else's comfort and happiness before your own. Um you gotta set boundaries in order to break free of that. Do you have any recent examples of boundary setting? I feel like I remember that one time that you told the story of your
One of my
downstairs neighbor.
neighbor.
Yeah. What's
Let
been
me look
going
at
on
my
with that? Can we
notes.
get an update? Is the
I haven't
boundary
seen
still
him.
healthy?
The boundary is held. I don't even see him. I like never see him. Yeah, I think the boundary has been set. There's no texting. There's no egregious texting happening. I'll tell you that.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
trying to think of a boundary I've set
This
recently.
thing, thing came from somebody. I wrote in my notes that it came from a great comment on YouTube. One of our listeners
Mm,
commented something. I think somebody wrote something in response to one of our other podcasts. They said it's okay to disappoint people and it's okay to be disappointed. And I can't remember the context in which somebody wrote that, but one of our listeners commented that, and I just thought it was a great comment. And to me, like disappointing people, I just think a lot of people who listen to this podcast and are like kindred spirits with us are very uncomfortable with the idea that you could ever disappoint someone you love. And to me, like to be clear, disappointing somebody is different from like promising you're going to do something and then not following through. Those are very different
yeah.
things. But yeah, if you're never disappointing people, you're not setting boundaries. Set literally the definition of setting a boundary means somebody is not going to get what they want from you. So another way to think of this is it is okay for people I love to not get what they want from me every second of my life.
Yeah, there's such a tendency to conflate disappointing people with hurting them. And while somebody might feel hurt that you've set a boundary, that doesn't mean that you have harmed them. You might have disappointed them, but it's not like an aggression. It's not a
It doesn't
if
have to
you're
be.
it doesn't have to be, at least. Exactly. There are ways to do it that are completely loving and respectful, and also respectful and loving to yourself. And that will disappoint other people, but I think I think it helps me to reassure myself that they might feel hurt, but that doesn't mean I hurt them.
Mm-hmm.
Like I maybe disappointed them, but that's normal. If I said something terrible to them, or, did something destructive towards them, like I just think that if you are kind of in the like middle 70% of people that has a generally like solid compass of how to treat someone you love, then you know when you've done something wrong versus knowing when it's something that maybe has disappointed them, but it doesn't mean you've like inherently baseline done something wrong.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes that line can get blurry, and I think that's where a lot of the struggle comes from, is like, oh, but I hurt them. It's like I don't know, like, is
Yeah,
it the
because
type
a
of
lot
hurt that
of
they'll get over, or
well,
is it?
maybe they won't. I think that's what's
Yeah.
complicated is a lot of the time the person on the receiving end is they write a narrative of what's happened.
Mm,
Parents all the time. Well, you didn't show up to the family reunion and I wanted you there and
yeah.
you and you're like, I'm studying for exams. I have this obligation, I have that obligation. Something had to go. This is the one that could. I know why I'm setting this boundary. I know why I'm going to disappoint my parents in this situation, and they're going to hate it. And they're going to write a narrative about me if they want. They might say I'm a horrible child. They might say I don't do enough. They can write whatever narrative they want, and they might never get over it. Lots of
Hmm.
people we love do that. And
True.
it might not ever change and they won't ever see the light. I think it happens so much with parents. But that's when it's most important. That's when, like, uh giving into that boundary, it'll never be enough. I think that's when it's hardest. It gets to be a lot easier setting boundaries with the friends who you also know are healthy and understanding in that way.
Right.
But that's not everybody we love. It's not everybody we
Right.
interact with. Yeah.
Yeah, that is exactly where I was like talking myself towards as I started to describe it. I was like, well, what about this? What about that?
Yeah, that's why
But
it's hard.
that's why it's hard. You're right. But
Their feelings about it, you just don't control that shit. It's like, is it worth it to you? Or my therapist said something really interesting recently where I was talking about one of my siblings who I have a really hard time setting a boundary with. I have a really hard time saying no to them. And I was like, I get it. Like, I know this is my fault. I know this is my problem. And she was like, okay, well, why is that hard for you? Why can you not say no to this one person? And we talked about it. And I'm like, intellectually, I get it, but I still can't stop. And it's for these reasons. Like, this is why I feel that way. And she was like, okay, listen, you get it intellectually. You're not there emotionally. That's okay. So when you let that person cross that boundary for you, when you're going to let them trample right across that boundary because you won't hold it firm, at least know for yourself why you are letting that boundary down. Name for
mm,
yourself, I am doing this because I am not in a place emotionally where I can handle them being mad at me yet. I am not in a place emotionally where I can handle them writing an unfair narrative about me. So it's like, maybe there's plenty of places in my life where, like, I am not good at upholding the boundary and I know that I should and I fucking don't, but at least be honest with yourself about why you are letting them trample it in this situation, and that's okay. I am doing this and it's going to deteriorate me and it's going to drain me and I'm probably going to have resentment for it, and that resentment is going to pop its head up in other ugly places, and I know this is not a healthy choice, and I'm doing it because I feel too run down right now to stand up for myself. I feel too run down to handle their anger. I feel too run down, like I just can't. I would rather deteriorate myself in this way. So at least, like, that was interesting for me, and it's been helpful to just be like, if you're going to deteriorate yourself in that way, name for yourself why you're doing it, because it's for a reason, and maybe you'll outgrow it one day, but at least name it for yourself, because the reason is not because I have to, and the reason is not because they're making me, and the reason is
Yeah.
not because I owe them. It's like I have an emotional reason that I can't stand up to right now, and that's okay. That's like every person.
Sounds like radical acceptance to me. I feel like it's like
Ugh.
accepting where you are
Yeah.
too, you know,
Totally. Totally.
accepting that, yes, creating this boundary here will be the best thing for me. Maybe it's something that I cannot do today or I cannot do
Totally.
this time, but it's what I want to work towards. And here are the reasons why I'm not there
Yeah.
yet. And I know I'm working
Yeah.
on those things. And it's just like acceptance of where you are right now. Um,
Totally.
I've
And
been
not
working on that a
deluding
lot too.
yourself. Not
Yeah,
deluding yourself in the meantime that you don't have a choice. Because it's like, for me in this situation, I have a fucking choice. I have a
right.
choice. And I don't want to face the consequences of it. So,
And I think
yeah.
also it can be harmful to yourself to like your self-confidence to act like you don't have a choice because you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah. You
And so
do.
almost to build yourself up and keep yourself feeling in control of the situation and in control of your own boundary setting,
Mm-hmm.
you have to remind yourself, I do have a choice and I'm just choosing not to do it
Yep.
right now because
This is a
that
choice.
still leaves the door open to make a different choice in the future. And that will ultimately kind of like help you build the strength to get there, I think.
Yeah. Yeah.
We nailed it. We nailed it.
Wow.
Is it time?
Maybe time,
Do we
dog.
want a silly thing?
I
Let me
kind
see
of
if I have
do.
anything silly. I would like
Yeah.
to end silly.
Give me your giggle fest.
Okay, okay.
I'm just laying with my feet up in the air like a baby right now, just staring at my toes.
Oh, you know how I should have set this up, and I don't know why I didn't. This is why
What?
I'm so uncomfortable.
What?
You have it set up so that your head is at the foot of the bed, right? And you're looking at your
Yeah.
headboard.
Yeah, you
I
did
should have
this a
done that.
crazy way. I don't know
I'm,
why you didn't.
it's because my laptop is on a little table next to my bed, but I could have just
Oh.
put my laptop on the bed and laid
Mm.
the same way you are. I could have put my feet up on the wall and had a really nice stretching
Yeah.
moment instead of what I'm experiencing in my lower back right now, which is agony.
I didn't want to get involved in your system.
I understand. It's not your fault. It's not your fault. We live and we learn. I'm gonna find a stupid thing to say
Okay.
about that already. I have a complaint.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I was on a flight last
Hate it.
week.
Hate it.
Hate already. I always have flight complaints. This is how we started our podcast journey, me complaining about a flight. And my sister actually pointed out, she was like, you get annoyed. She was like, I have anxiety about flying, like just being in the air and being on a plane. I have travel anxiety. That's like a normal thing that a lot of people experience. You, on the other hand, Jessica, are just annoyed that other people are also on the flight. And I was like, yeah, fair
No, that's
enough. That
also
is.
normal. No, that's also normal to me. That's normal.
So, but this was genuinely egregious. So I was in the window seat. Somebody was in the middle and then somebody was in the aisle. It was a long flight. I was going to San Francisco for work and I needed to get to the bathroom. So I tapped the person next to me. They were getting up and the person in the aisle seat, a small man, he was small, so maybe he could afford to do this, but he wasn't that small. All he did was twist his legs to the side and he stayed seated and made it so that I just had to scoot past him with this fat ass right in his face. He didn't
Maybe you
get
wanted
up. The person in the
he
middle seat got up and
you
he
wanted to get a
just
sniff.
twisted
You wanted
his
to get a little
legs to the
smell.
right. Oh my God. Who does that? It was insane.
People
It
do
was insane.
that. People do
And then, of
that.
course,
Yeah.
he was the same person, this same man at the end of the flight. He was the first person to hop up into the aisle. And we're deplaning and we're in,
Oh, now
row
you're gonna
20.
hop. Now you're gonna hop up, bro. Your legs were working a few minutes ago.
Your legs are working now,
Yeah.
bro.
So to me, that's just like everything's about me. I don't want to get up. You do this. I want to get up. No, no. Yeah. Yeah, we can shoot him.
unbelievable to me. I've never seen that.
Unbelievable.
It's
So
one
I
thing if
have
like a
seen
little
that.
kid does that. That's fine. You're like, you take up
Yeah.
you don't even take up the seat. But
Well, if they do that, I'm like, okay, so you're giving me full permission to brush my asshole or my pussy right in your face. That's what you're
right.
saying you want. And I'll give it to you if I feel like it. I'm not sucking this shit in. You want to smell my butt? Do it.
Well,
Smell
then
it
now I have
good.
to now I'm in a position where I have to make the decision, do I do pussy front or ass front? Like, what do I put to the face?
You never give them pussy for free. No,
I
you don't do
agree.
that.
I agree. I went with ass because there's more padding there between me
Totally.
and between him and like the center of me. But
Totally.
it's just like I shouldn't have to make that decision, you know? At
I
the
know. No,
This
totally.
happens at the
Totally.
movie theater, but at the movie theater there's more space at least. I'm
And
okay
it's
with
hard.
it.
You're not going to get up and hop into the aisle if you're in the middle of a movie.
Right, but you stand
Yeah.
up usually, or at a concert, you just like stand
At
up
a
from your
concert.
seat.
Yeah.
Oh, I've been thinking about this for weeks.
Yeah. No, I'm mad at the little man.
He's a little man.
Little
Smallest
man
in the world. There's a Taylor Swift song that's called that, and I haven't listened to it, but I know
and he
that
was
it's
on that
about him.
flight.
Yeah.
My worst getting up, like to go to the bathroom, not being in the aisle story on a plane. I don't remember how old I was. I feel like I was like 19 or 20. It was a long time ago, but I wasn't a child. And I was in the window seat, and the person, a stranger who I didn't know, it was a man, was in the aisle seat, and he fell asleep, and I couldn't wake him up. Like, I didn't try that hard. I didn't like slap him across the face, but I like, nudged or said, excuse me. And like, he wasn't getting up. And so I was like, okay, I'm pretty nimble. Like, I'll just like walk over the arms of this chair and get over him. And once again, first of all, wrong decision, obviously, but
He
just
wakes
like
up
would
and you're just hovering over him.
Jessica, that's exactly what happened. Jessica, that's exactly what happened. He woke up while I was like pussy flitting right in front of his nose, and it wasn't my butt because it was way, I need to grab onto things, and I'm like walking on the armrests, and that seemed way harder to do with my butt facing him than with my front facing it. Like I had to, you know what I mean? Otherwise,
I get it.
He'd really be up in there. Yeah, and then he woke up right as I was like breaching the bridge of his body, and I just like flitted off, just like jumped off last minute and ran down the aisle, went to the bathroom, and then it turns out I still had to come back and sit there, so that was a weird return. Yeah.
It's terrible the ways that humanity is forced to interact with each other on planes.
I know. On planes, I mean, you feel upset that people are on planes with you. I just can't believe that people insist on being most of the time.
Just being anywhere.
Yeah, why are they out here?
Yeah, true. Go home.
Go home. Well, yeah, that's generous.
Thank you so much.
Okay, take us home.
Let's all go home. This has been Not For Everyone. You can find us on YouTube. You can find us on Instagram. Everything you need to know is in our description. I'm not going to say it all. I think you should share one of our Instagram reels or YouTube shorts with a friend this week. That's what I think you should do. You should go on there, scroll through, give them some likes. Honestly, you could afford to do that. And send one of your favorites to a friend. You probably want someone to talk about our crazy asses with. So get them listening to the pod. Anything else, Caroline?
No, I like that. I just want to say so many of you guys went and rated the podcast when we asked you to, like 2 weeks ago. We are just saying, like, if it doesn't take anything from your day, just go click the stars on the app. And like hundreds, I watched a number, like hundreds and hundreds of people went and gave us a rating. And it actually like helps our endeavor so much. So thank you. Just want to say thank you.
Thank you, toodaloos, and toodaloo to you.
Wow. All right. Put her to bed.